Michael Berge with Digiday, back here at the Digiday studios at Possible. And I'm very happy to get into a discussion about identity, audience, and the like with Matt Spiegel, who is the EVP of True Audience Growth Strategy at TransUnion, correct?
That's correct.
I got it right.
You got it. You got it.
A very good start to the interview.
Nailed it.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Nailed it. Thank you. Thanks for being here, Matt.
Sure.
How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well.
Good.
Thank you.
This is your third Possible, I think,
I've been
right?
at all three. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions about Possible later.
Great.
But I kind of want to start with, can you give us a bit of a sense of what True Audience is? And you're obviously heading growth strategy there.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So True Audience is the brand of our marketing solutions technology stack. So really at the intersection of data and technology is where we play. My role, I've been with TransUnion now for 8 years, and I joined at a time where we were just barely dipping our toe in the water in this ecosystem.
Yeah.
I've helped kind of navigate that journey in a bunch of different roles. At this point in time, my role is to be a connector of all things that we're doing, both in market and inside TransUnion. Make sure our product teams and our market teams are connected, make sure we're listening to the voice of our customers, help with key relationships. And listen, generally speaking, my job is to make sure that as we've built up this technology, we built up these capabilities, that we have an eye towards where the market's going, that we're meeting the needs of our customers.
Ooh, so I'm going to ask you, and it's a bit of a curveball. So
right.
where is the market going?
Well,
That's what I'd love to know.
Well,
Given how important, kind of audience, identity, and data is to the world of marketing, where is it going?
yeah, well, listen, I don't think it's going one place. I think that's part of why it's so complex.
Yeah.
What is the consistent everywhere is that everyone is on some curve of understanding just what it means to put real consumer data and insights at the heart of a marketing strategy.
Yeah.
There's no doubt that the end goal is personalization. In fact, we just did a consumer survey and we found that 40% of consumers appreciate that personalization impacts their purchase plans, right? So that they understand how that has an impact. So clearly at the most macro, everyone is trying to figure out how to drive a more relevant, personalized experience. Mm-hmm. In the guts of what we do all the time, with all this different technology, with all the different data sources, I think what people are trying to figure out is how do you stitch them together? Yeah. And that's the core problem we've seen, is that that's actually a really, really hard problem to solve.
That is a big challenge, especially with like differences in signal. And
Yes.
when it comes to signal, we've got Google's latest flip-flop. There's no nice way to put it. After 5 years of, no, maybe, suddenly like cookies aren't going away. How does that affect what you do at TransUnion? How does it affect TransUnion and your clients? And is it important that it's not going away?
It's interesting. My flip answer is no, it's not important.
I feel that way, but I'm not telling anybody.
But I think had this happened 5 years ago, it might have been a different story. I think the journey that's happened in this industry has made it almost a non-story. What do I mean? Well, number one, the cookie is only relevant in a browser.
Yes.
Right. And it turns out a lot of what we do with the way we consume content is not in a browser.
Goes beyond browsers.
That's right. And so that's one part. Second part is the back and forth has had a lot of companies move past the notion of the cookie as an identity signal, which quite frankly was never a particularly good identity signal to begin with. So, listen, the fact that it exists means it is another signal we can use. But we strategically have believed, both for TransUnion and the ecosystem, that the way to really solve an identity resolution problem isn't with that kind of signal, certainly not alone. That is not a performant enough signal.
Right.
So our job has always been yes and. What are all the different ways we can help stitch together an understanding of who a person is, who a household is, and then ultimately make that person or that household addressable. So the fact that the cookie's here, we'll use it where relevant, but quite frankly, I think the industry has moved past it in most ways anyway, and we certainly have as well, and we've seen the same thing with our clients.
Now, I have heard in some circles that there's a little surprise that marketers didn't make more progress in moving past cookies. In your experience, are you seeing that a little bit too, where there's been a little bit of like, oh, well, they haven't done it yet, so maybe we don't need to worry about it right now. We can back burner it maybe for another year. Any thoughts on that?
I think that's kind of true. I think for most part, though, when we say marketers haven't moved past, what it means is their technology and data partners haven't moved past.
Yeah, okay.
Right? Because most marketers are relying on some outsourced provider to really help answer those questions.
Yes.
We're in the guts of this right now when we're at this level, right?
Yeah.
So a marketer's ability to really move past a cookie is really dependent on, does their analytics and measurement partner move past the cookie? Did their identity partner move past the cookie? Did their technology stack move past the cookie? And so I suppose you could give grief to those that haven't worked with partners that have evolved past it, right? But really the marketer's job was to source good partners. Mm-hmm. And so I suppose there's some rub there because our industry is pretty good at keeping the lights on a lot of things that probably over time we don't need.
Yeah.
And at the same time, listen, the fact that streaming is as big as it is, is indicative of the cookie isn't relevant everywhere.
Right.
But there are some misnomers, right? There's been this notion that you can't do attribution in this cookieless world. That's just not true. We've done it. We have all the necessary data integrations to get you access for good attribution. But I think that FUD in the marketplace has gotten some people paralyzed. So maybe that's part of what we're both seeing.
Okay, that very very interesting point. Let's see. I wanted to also ask you about does AI factor into how are you incorporating AI into the requisite crunching that gives your clients the type of kind of quality identity information and data that they need?
Yeah. Listen, I think it's always important in these conversations to highlight there are two forms of AI our industry really deals with: the machine learning.
I oversimplified it,
right? Which is
sorry.
no, all good, right? I like to make sure we're probably talking about Gen AI these days, right?
And I should have said Gen AI. Yes,
all good. I just like to make sure I'm answering the right
I think
question.
it's very smart of you to do that. Thank you. Keep me honest.
Yeah, all good. Listen, it's game changing, right? Why? Ultimately, because it's going to make it a lot easier to discover the types of audience signals you're looking for, right? We're going to move from a world, and already are, like we're in the early innings of this, but clearly you can see in stuff that we are working on and the industry at large.
Yeah.
But you move from a kind of a point and click mentality into a really easy prompt discoverability to have conversations with technology to help you understand consumer insights in a way that you couldn't before, or you could, but it would take a lot longer to get
right.
So yeah, listen, I am long on all things that impact by Gen AI. I think there's some places where we've overhyped it, which is of course how this works. But at the core, the notion that the way marketing is executed will change. I totally agree. One of the best things I've ever heard is think of a Gen AI engine not as a couple more engineers, but as 1,000 interns. And for me, that really thinks about all the questions you could send those interns to ask.
That's a really good way of
right. I really love that one, which is why I've stolen it. I wish I could source it. I don't remember who said it to me first.
It's all good.
But I think it's indicative of that's the type of thing we'll see, where it will be the speed to get to the strategy will happen a lot faster. The speed to perform analytics will be a lot faster because we will ask the computer, we'll ask the engine to give us the right answer or the answer we think we're looking for.
Yeah.
And if we don't get it, we'll just ask a different question and we'll get it again really quickly.
Yeah.
That's a lot different than running through the cycles that you run through today. So I think it's going to be very important for our industry for sure.
Good point. Last question for you. I think you've been to all possibles, right?
Yeah.
This is your third one here.
Yeah. If this is the third, I've been to all of them.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
Right. I think that's right.
Yes. No. There's only the third one. It's grown a lot.
Yeah.
Any observations of kind of why you think it's grown so much and what you get out of it?
Yeah, listen, it's interesting. I mean, clearly it speaks to as a hunger in the community for a forum to have good content, share good conversations. It's interesting because I don't think that necessarily from a macro environment you would have said that would be true. But clearly the community was still looking for another place that's more about marketing. I think we often talk about that. We have CES in January, which is, not the best time thing.
Marketing kind of got tacked on.
Although I do connect the consumer product evolution to marketing. So I think there's something interesting there.
Yes.
But to your point, it's not a marketing conference.
Right.
So something that can be centered on marketing. We obviously have Cannes coming up, but that's a much more limited audience, a very specific thing that we've descended around. And just so to have a kind of future of marketing conference clearly has been filling a void.
Yeah.
And I suppose it speaks to the types of conversations we're having and the problems that exist. And, that there needs marketers and service providers are looking for a forum to have those conversations.
So you think you'll come back for year 4?
I think we'll be here.
Excellent. Well, thank you for taking some time to speak with us today. Great to meet you, Matt Spiegel. Thank you.